finally feel emboldened to wear a cardinal tie, and they lose instead of winning their 9th in a row. I'm really disappointed. Ryan, I know, is thrilled about that, but I should take this off. It's no longer good luck, but yeah. Living in community, that's what we do, whether we like it or not. And we often feel, at least I do, that the world should agree to center itself around me. They should agree that my schedule and my busyness is the most important factor in the entire world. That's why I get mad at red lights. It should not stop me. It should know that I have the most important things to do. It drives me crazy when people drive slow around me. They should know to get out of my way because I have the most important things to do. And if the world would just center itself around me and make me the most important person in the world, life would be great. Highway accidents would not happen in my lane. Slow lines would not happen at the Walmart I'm at, and nothing would ever be sold out. But at least nothing that I want would ever be sold out. But so far, I cannot convince anybody that, much less even my own family sometimes. The truth is that we live in a community, every one of us. And I'm not just talking about church community, but in a community at large. And we have to consider other people as we live out our lives. And Scripture is very clear. We need to take into consideration other people. Proverbs is a big case in point. We are one among many. Even those of you who are only children. Can you raise your hands if you're an only child? Raise your hand. I envision. Go ahead, Joe Scott, raise your hand proudly. Come on, there you go. Raise your hand. I can see you guys having the greatest difficulty. Your kids, your parents treated like you're the most precious thing in the whole world and everything revolves around you. It doesn't. It doesn't. Take, for instance, this whole realm of legal things called disturbing the peace. This is an example of this. The truth is we have to live in community with other people. We have to consider their needs and their interests as important. And we must understand that we're doing for good of the community, not just for the good of me. Now listen, all summer long, young people, you've had your own schedule, you lived at your house and you were able to do everything. Now we're going back to school. Now you're in a classroom. Now you're in a school building full of people, and everybody has got to keep peace and keep community. And by the way, that's not just for our young people. That's for all of us. We are working with other people, driving with other people, and we have to consider the needs of others. Take that rule, disturbing the peace. There is a law against disturbing the peace. In other words, when your behavior is of such magnitude that it interferes with other people's liberties, it's illegal. And the whole thing is, if I just lived on an island by myself, I could not be charged with disturbing the peace. Okay, so you call the police department, and I asked them one time, what is the most common way people disturb the peace? Anybody want to take a guess? Noise. Well, yeah, but what kind of noise? What creates the noise? Loud stereos. First picture right here. Yeah, the guy likes his music. It's all about that bass, And he rings it, and he wants everybody to hear the bass. Boom, boom, boom. And he goes down the street, and you think, was that an earthquake? No, it's just Bubba going by listening to his country music. Boom, boom, right? That's the number one way of disturbing the peace. He likes his music so much, he wants everybody to enjoy it, right? Now, there is that country music song about this lady likes to go out and drive on the highway and roll down the windows and listen to me. It's her church, is what she calls it. It's her therapy, and I know all about this, but when your therapy suddenly interferes with somebody else's privacy, it becomes disturbing the peace, and you have to consider other people. I appreciate our secretary who likes Black Sabbath, but she doesn't listen to it so loud it gets into my office. That's kind of deal. Second most common way, anybody have an idea? What's the second most common way to disturb the peace? Dogs. You like having dogs, right? He can't do much, I don't think. But you know the point. The idea is you love your animals and they're like a member of your family. But when they bark all night and your neighbors can't sleep, you become something less than a neighbor. You become a disturber of the peace. There are other things too. When somebody's inebriated, comes into your place of business, won't leave, that's another one of these. But the entire thing is this: we have to get along with one another in close proximity with other people, which means I have to consider how my behavior affects somebody else. I have to. I was writing this out the other day when Charlotte comes in and she says, well, I'm going home to 15 young people in my house. Caroline's turning 16 and she's having 15 people in my house, and I'm sitting here working on a disturbing the peace paragraph, and I'm wondering, how does that relate? I said, how are you you are insane. She said, not really. I take them outside and I lock all the doors. That's all I'm going to do. So she has her peace in her house, but all her neighbors, which is mostly her mother, is going to be kept, and insane because of all these kids running around. We have to consider each other as we live out our lives. It's not the world revolves around me. And the proverb writer would say this to his son: there's a whole realm of things I want to say to you because you do care about what other people, how other people view you and how they experience you. So the Proverbs writer wants to say you're responsible for the impact your behavior has on other people. So he says, don't greet your neighbor loudly in the morning or it will be a curse. So those of you going off to college, when you get to your dorm room about next Monday when classes start, let's say you've got a class starting at 8 and most of the people in the hall don't have one till 9. I want you to wake up about 6 o'clock and loudly bless your neighbor and see the impact it has on people. I think you already know. The proverb writer would say 3 or 4 things, and I want to give you some things as you start school and as you go into the community tomorrow. Number 1, avoid strife with other people. As much as depends on you, avoid strife. Do not join in on the drama that the world has plenty of. There's lots of drama in this world. And so here's what he says in Proverbs 20, verse 3. It is an honor for a man to keep aloof from strife. Every fool wants to get into the latest quarrel. But the wise man stays aloof from strife. I just want to stay out of your drama and stuff. And so here's what you do. When you decide to start school, stay out of most of it. If you will avoid the drama of other people, you will have a largely peaceful existence. Isn't that true? Yeah? Well, here's some ways. Number 1, overlook it. We have a tendency to want to return the love when somebody does something to us. If I'm slighted in some way, I've got to have my vengeance. I've got to have justice. But here's what the proverb writer says. Good sense makes one slow to anger, and it's his glory to overlook an offense. Guys, sometimes when people do things to you that you don't like, sometimes you can simply absorb it, overlook it, and let it go. You do not have to have justice every time something happens to you. And you can just understand this as, I've done stupid stuff like that to other people before. They blundered. I'm just going to overlook it. You can choose not to be offended. We have too many people in our culture who choose to be offended by every little thing that happens that they don't like. And they'll put it on Facebook or they'll say it to somebody else. Well, you offended me. Choose not to be offended. It's a choice you make, you know. Choose not to be offended all the time. Don't put your feelings and your opinions on your shoulder waiting for somebody to knock it off. Overlook some of that. It just ain't no big deal a lot of times. Let it go. That's how you keep peace, avoiding strife with other people. Overlook it. Here's another one he says, cover it up. Chapter 17, verse 9. He who covers over an offense promotes love, but whoever repeats the matter separates close friends. I tell you what, when somebody does something to you, just cover it up. Somebody says something bad about somebody else, instead of repeating it, just let it die with you and let the drama die with you. It's just not worth it. Cover for it. And occasionally, if you're honest, you need to realize that you are the one that's doing the frustrating. You've said or you've done something to someone else that they could easily be offended by. And if that's the case, quit doing it, shut your mouth, and go on. Here's how he says it in the book of Proverbs, chapter 17, verse 14. Starting a quarrel is like breaching a dam. You can't do it. So drop the matter before the dispute breaks out. If you see that something you're doing is feeding a fire, keep your mouth shut. Here's how he puts it in the next one. Listen to this very carefully. One of our young people dealt with this in a devotional not long ago, did a great job. If you have played the fool and exalted yourself, or if you have planned evil, clap your hand over your mouth. You know what that looks like? Everybody try this with me. You ready? If you realize that you started talking about yourself too much, or you're saying something that offends somebody, you do this. Everybody try it. Like, you know what this means? I'm shutting myself up. You don't shut me up. I'm shutting myself up. I see what I'm doing to you, and I'm shutting up. That's what that means. The best person to shut you up is you. So you look around and you realize, now, in order to do this, you've got to be aware of how people are taking you. And one of the great things about our God image is that we can step outside ourselves and see how people are taking us. And so, like right now, I'm doing this. I'm gauging right now as we speak whether I've got you with me or not. And some of you I've lost already. I can see that. That's okay. Some of you are actually with me, and you're the ones I'm talking to. And so I'm aware of how you're perceiving me, and I can tell whether I'm communicating or not. That's what we need to be doing all the time. When you're talking about yourself too much and you realize everybody's going, oh my, he's talking about himself again, here's what you do. Take note of that and shut up. Notice what he keeps on saying. As churning the milk produces butter, what happens? You've got this liquid milk and you're churning it. It's going to harden it. Okay? That's where. And then the second one is, as twisting the nose produces blood. So I can go down there to Thomas Nix right now and just do this. If I do it enough, blood will come out. And then the third one says, so stirring up anger produces strife. If you are in a conversation with someone and you're seeing that they're not perceiving you well and they're not receiving you well, take note of it and quit digging your grave, quit digging and get out of the hole. Makes sense, doesn't it? He says to us, be aware of your impact on other people. Watch, take notes. There are a segment of people that I know, however, who have no idea the impact they're having on the people in front of them. It's like it does not register with them. They're not taking this information in, and so they're conventionally not able to understand this. If you are, and you realize something you've said or done has caused people to turn you off or be offended by you, stop doing it. And the last way I would say is this: mind your own business. If you'll do this 99% of the time, you'll avoid all strife. It says, like one who seizes a dog by the ears is a passerby who meddles in a quarrel that's not his own. So you don't go up to a strange dog and just start playing around with him and twisting his ears and see what his temperament is. You don't do that because he could hurt you. Well, the same thing you need to do is when you see two people on a quarrel or something, leave that thing alone and just mind your own business. That's how we avoid strife with other people and get along. There's a second category, I'd say. It's called love your enemies. This is a little different. That's why I put annoyers in there. Enemies aren't necessarily people who hate your guts and want to shoot you. Sometimes your enemies are those people who, when you're around and they're around you, they just annoy the far out of you. Anybody have anybody like that? Would you point? No, don't. I see brothers. It's a real challenge because, boy, there's this people that God puts in your life just to be like sandpaper in your life. Proverbs suggests that even with your annoyers, you can have peace. You cannot have a long, drawn-out, loud, obnoxious fight with people that you love if you treat them that way. Keep peace by not entering this war. And he gives us a few steps. Number one is this: don't seek to respond to them the way they've responded to you. Do not seek revenge on people. They may have treated you unkindly. They may have bumped you somewhere. They may have just made a life a little bit of a disruption to you. Do not testify against your neighbor without cause or use your lips to deceive. Do not say, I'll do to him as he's done to me. I'll pay back that man for what he did. Don't do that. The person who pays back evil for good, evil will never leave his house. If you constantly have to get back at everybody who annoys you, if you have to respond in kind all the time, you will have annoyances all the time. So, Don't seek revenge. Secondly, don't wish harm on them. Do not gloat when your enemy falls. When he stumbles, don't let your heart rejoice, or the Lord will see and disapprove and turn his wrath away from him. It's the idea that I don't even want you wishing and longing to be able to see revenge come to them indirectly. And third, when a person has been unkind to you, you return them with kindness. Here's what he says, Proverbs 25. If your enemy's hungry, give him food to eat. If he's thirsty, give him some water to drink. In doing this, you're going to heap burning coals on his head, and the Lord's going to reward you. You're just going to make him angry at himself for having done that to you, and the Lord will bless you. God sees everything that's done to you, the evil that has come your way, and he's going to take up your cause as long as you don't take it up yourself. There's this story in 2 Kings 6 of this being described in a perfect way. Elisha is there, about to be surrounded by the enemy. He's surrounded by the enemy. And what he does is, he knows the enemy's coming, and so he's like, well, here's what we're going to do. These army people start coming at him. They're riding their horses down a hill to get Elisha. And God says, Lord, strike them with blindness. And suddenly they're riding horses down a hill, and the lights go out. They can't see anything. They come down the hill. They come up to Elisha, and they say to him, we're looking for Elisha. And Elisha says to them, I think I can take you to where he is. He's the one talking to them. And he leads them into the only area where Israel outnumbers them. It's the capital city. They lead them into the capital city, and they close the doors. And then he says, the leader of Israel says to him, do you want us to kill him now? Well, no, I don't want you to kill him, Elisha says. I want you to feed him. And so Israel put on this banquet, and Elisha says, Lord, open their eyes now. They open their eyes, and there's this food in front of them, and they all eat, and it says they left, and they never bothered Israel again. That's how you treat your enemies. Invite them to your house, feed them something really good, and when they leave, they'll never be your enemy again. Isn't that the moral of the story? I don't know, but it sounds good. It sounds like a good one, right? Third category, maintain justice. Always do the right thing. No matter what anybody else does to you, you do the right thing. And there's three of them. One is always tell the truth. Always tell the truth. In the Ephesians letter, Paul says, I want you to tell the truth because you're members of one family. You cannot lie to each other. And so we're the same way. You're members of one community. You should never lie to each other. Number two, do not steal. Respect the right of private property. Do not steal from people. And number three, don't show favoritism. Those with the most money get the best defense, it says in Proverbs 24, and it's probably true. Truth is often sacrificed for the highest price, but community can't be built that way, so don't show favoritism. And finally, the last one, this is what I would tell anybody as Christians going into public school. Be kind to those in need. Defend the defenseless. Show kindness to the poor. Show special deference to the fatherless and the widow. If you would live like this, you can live in community in a way that reflects well on you and your faith, because God is concerned about how his people look in the world. In 1 Peter, he says, I want you to live in such a way that even pagans acknowledge that the way you live is good, and it makes an impression upon them that's positive. Proverbs, in a sense, is answering the question of Cain. Am I my brother's keeper? And the answer is yes, you are. And your behavior affects other people and influences what other people think of you and your God. And if you can do those little things that just stay out of people's way and don't rub them the wrong way, you can make a positive impression on people. Concern yourself with how you're perceived in the world, church. We are trying to be salt and light. We are trying to win the world for God, and we're not going to do that when it's all about me and my stuff, and I'm not concerning myself with how my behavior and my tone affects the people I'm around. I want to have a positive influence in this world. I want to have such a way with people that they look at me with positive regard. And you can, by just simply doing those things that reflect well on the fact that I realize my life is not just about me. In the New Testament, it said something different. Look not only on your own interests, but look at the interests of other people. Put their interests above your own. and start to view your life through the lens of other people. What kind of impact are you having on others? And if it's pretty negative, pretty bad, start looking at it and saying, how can I make this change? The proverb writer says that is a concern of God about you. Do consider others better than yourself, because we live in a community that we're trying to reach. We live in a community we're trying to positively influence. We're living in a community we want to save. So let's act like it, and act like it matters. If anybody, for whatever reason, if I were to look at an invitation and give an invitation that reflects this, I would say this: are you living selfishly? Do you only care about yourself all the time? That is something you need to repent of, because we are living for other people. We as the church are the one community that exists for the benefit of the people outside of it, and we must consider them when we live our lives. If you are a believer and you need, for whatever reason, to respond to this invitation tonight, do so now as we stand and sing to encourage you.
Here I am.